Are you excited for next year to be on the committee?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that something actually happens because if there's a second surge and we go into lockdown, then all everything will take place from in this format. Uh,
Yeah, damn it in.
yeah, assuming we don't all perish in
Yeah,
the apocalypse. Yeah, I'm excited.
right. Dan, you're in. Unmute. I'll unmute you, Dan. Hello.
Hello, finally. Apologies
Cool.
for the technicalities.
Fuck it. Let's start. Right, so I started 15 minutes ago, so I've got 25 minutes. Goodo.
Well, no, at the moment there's only 3 of us, so you have unlimited time.
Does it? Oh,
Yeah,
right, okay.
it's unlimited for up to 3 people, and any more than that.
Oh, okay. Will it give me a notification?
I think so.
Because I don't want it to just be like, time's up, bye.
Time is over.
Cool. Well, we may as well start. This is quite exciting because it's the first ever, I imagine, Drama Sock online workshop-y, meeting-y thing. So that's quite exciting.
Yeah.
And
Shall I do my usual spiel? Hi, here's the announcements.
yes.
Nothing.
Have we got a health and safety briefing?
Don't die. Don't get coronavirus.
Wash your hands. Stay alert.
Wash your hands. Stay alert.
Oh yeah.
Cool. So today's session, I know. Today's session, the most popular answer we had for doing one of these sessions was to do audition advice and finding a monologue. I did a kind of similar, possibly identical workshop during actual term time. So I've changed it up a bit. Some of the stuff will be the same, but I've tried to get different perspectives and different ideas and advice on it. So thank you, Ben, for coming, and anybody who watches in the future. What was I going to say? Yeah, now that exams are over, I think we are starting to kind of come up with ideas. We had between the committee, we had a little bit of a talk over other ideas we can do, and I think we'll start having those sessions or whatever come. I think there are ideas for a quiz. I've had a few ideas, maybe some competitions or whatnot.
I was thinking of doing a general Q&A thing at some point. Just any questions you have, possibly film a skit at some point. Just stuff to keep you guys entertained.
If you want to go to a quiz, by the way, UE Gliding host a quiz every Tuesday, and all welcome. So you're more than welcome to join in with that.
Yes. Lovely plug. Yeah, no, that's cool. If you message us, I don't know, we could put details on our social medias and stuff. So cool. I'll just get started with it, I guess. So we've got audition advice and finding a monologue. So to start off, I almost hate this bit because I feel to talk about audition advice and finding monologues, I've kind of got to give credit to what I say. So so this bit's a bit more about me, which I don't particularly but I've done loads of auditions. I've done good auditions, and I've done really shit auditions, apocalyptically bad auditions. I've done audition workshops with some kind of drama professionals. I know this year at UE they had the head of arts ed come in and do a workshop. I went to that workshop. I've auditioned for a few quite good companies, and a lot of the time I haven't succeeded, but sometimes I have succeeded. So I think I've got a bit of a scope on what to say. Is that a hand up, Ben? I can't tell.
No, I'm suggesting something.
Oh, right, that's fine. I guess if anyone has any questions, put it in the chat or whatnot. But yeah. So I think we'll start off, because me and Dan have both been on the panels this year for auditions, and I guess Ben will be next year. I thought we'd start off with giving some advice on what kind of panelists kind of expect of auditionees and auditionees, and what you should how you should present yourself to a panel. So the first things I've got down is, these are very obvious ones, but I think they're very important ones. Preparation is the first one, which seems like a very obvious thing, but you always have to know your monologue. You always have to know what you're auditioning for. So you need to know what to kind of expect, maybe what questions they're going to ask you. You've also got to have a good attitude. Kind of, I don't want to say not know your place, but just be very respectful to auditionee or the panelists, sorry, and yeah, just be respectful. Answer what questions they have. If they tell you to redo any of your monologue or whatever, or if they ask weird questions, just kind of go with it. I know when I was on a panel, I was asking some weird questions which seemed quite unnecessary, and I started asking them. I was asking people what their favorite Shakespeare plays and stuff like that was. And also try and be original with your performance, or try and find an audition piece which is quite unique and quite unseen. I don't know, something they might not have heard or seen in a while. And yeah, Dan, do you have any notes from being on a panel?
I'll throw in some more niche ones. So I've had my fair share of auditions too. Find a way to stand out, not just because obviously with the monologue choice, of course, but there's also, well, you have a lot of time with these people, so if there's an opportunity to crack a joke, make them laugh, or remember you. No, please, anything but the boobies. Okay. Yeah, my way to stand out, be you, let your personality shine, because they're looking for personalities as well as actors. They want to see people that work together. I had another point. What was I going to say? I should write this down. God.
Well, something for the Fringe that I was always aware of is, with the Fringe, we also want to take people who we know we can trust, we know we're going to have a good time with. So again, I think that comes back to that kind of being nice and respectful, blah-de-blah.
I've got it. When you're learning a monologue, don't learn it in a particular rhythm, because they will almost certainly make you do it a different way. And if you only learn it to one rhythm, that can really throw you. That's caught me off guard, I think, once or twice, and it's not fun. So try to find a way just to learn it in a way you could do it any possible way. Try practicing it in different ways, because you'll probably have to do it in different ways.
Cool. Yeah. I also forgot to mention that if we've got time, because I'm pushing it a bit, we'll talk a bit about the National Youth Theatre, because I think that's a great kind of establishment to audition for. I think they provide some really good stuff for young actors, so I think it's good to kind of talk about them a bit at the end if we've got time. And in regards to that, I was at a Q&A session with some London casting directors through the National Youth Theatre, and they were saying, because they're often on panels and they're always meeting people, that's essentially their jobs, and the big thing they always talked about was cleanliness, or like being clean, which sounds a bit bizarre, but it's, you want to look good for an audition, and it's not like be like handsome, be chiseled or anything like that. It's just, shower, bath, don't wear shoes covered in dog shit. Just kind of have a good sense of cleanliness or appearance. And yeah, that was the kind of advice they gave.
Don't have a scraggy quarantine beard like I've got at the moment.
Yeah, I apologise.
I had a scraggly quarantine beard before quarantine started.
No, your beard is magnificent.
Right, yeah. And my next point I was going to talk about is, which I kind of briefly already talked about, was you have to kind of know your stuff. And there's almost no point going into an audition if you're going to go in half-assed. So common one is learn your monologue, but also kind of know what type of monologue they're looking for. So you'll often be asked to do a contemporary monologue, a classical monologue, and I don't know, you could get asked to do a monologue on any kind of genre or type of play. So a lot of people don't really know, or I certainly didn't know, what the line was between contemporary, because contemporary just means like new or recent, I guess. And how do you class that as, what do you class as kind of recent? Because in terms of like history, the 1940s is recent, and you know what I mean. In terms of when you need to find a contemporary monologue, I'd always try and say to find the most, or find a recent monologue. So a monologue of a play that's happened maybe in the last 10, 20 years, maybe.
Yeah.
I think, and I've heard this advice somewhere, but I can't remember where from, so I do apologize. But I think if you look it up, Pinter counts as contemporary. But I feel I've always had the impression that people are a bit put off by Pinter because he was around mostly in like the 60s, and well, he had his plays in the 60s, and I think that's too old, I think, for contemporary monologue. I think they're looking for plays that have kind of just come out last 10 years, last 20 years. And I think that's your best time to kind of find the best monologue. Again, with classical monologues, you're normally thinking about Elizabethan. So Shakespeare, Marlowe, all that stuff. I don't think I've ever done an audition, and I've done bloody loads. I've never been to an audition where I think Chekhov or, again, Pinter has ever been great for monologues. I mean, they're great writers in their own respect, but I've never really known a panelist to view plays from like the 1900s as a good time to have monologues for. I don't know why, but they tend to look for kind of Shakespeare or very recent plays. That tends to be the best kind of times to look for. Also, in regard to knowing your stuff, I think it's always good to have questions. And because questions, though they may be kind of pointless, and maybe you already know the answer to them, but if you, as someone who's been on a panel, if somebody's asking me questions, it tells to me that they're more interested. And I know that might not be the case, but you've got to present yourself like you want this and you're interested and you want this part or want this role or whatever. And I think it's always good to ask questions to kind of show that. I think when people are like, no, I don't have questions, not always, but it can come across as maybe not being as into it as well. If hypothetically, if we have someone audition and say we have two people audition and they've got exactly the same ability roughly, and one of them's asking loads of questions, someone sounding really excited, and then one person who's just like, no, I don't have any questions. I think it looks better to kind of have questions and to look interested. And also, when people on panels do ask for questions, when we ask questions or people on panels ask questions, they're normally kind of the same questions. So I think you can kind of half plan, half guess an answer, or you can think of a little bit to talk about that you can try and work into a question. That sounds very political. But I think that's true. I remember when I did an audition, and it was a successful audition in the end. I remember that I really wanted to talk about my interest in sport. And bear with me, I'll get onto this, because I find a lot of, this sounds weird and this is going to make me sound so unprofessional, but I find a lot of similarities between sport and theatre. And I'd kind of planned an answer based around that. And I don't know, it could have been a shit point or it could have been a really good point, but I got in and I talked about how sport is like theatre for me, or no, how theatre is like sport for me, or something like that. On that note, a common question I do get asked when I'm in auditions is, what interests do I have other than acting? And though it sounds good to always say, it sounds good to always be like, oh, when I'm not acting, I just love thinking about acting, or I love acting theatre or watching theatre shows, and I like learning monologues, and I like preparing for acting. Acting is just my life. Although that sounds amazing, because of course you're auditioning for an acting role or a role in theatre, what they're looking for, and I know this for sure, what they're looking for with that question is your other interests, because they also want to know you as a person as well as an actor. So when they ask me, what do you do in your spare time? One of my responses is talking about sport and talking about football. And I'm a Geordie, and football's very prominent here. So I talk about football, and then I link that football to kind of theatre. And, you know, you've just got to make sure that you present yourself as a kind of wide ranging person rather than just I am an actor. My only function is to act. I only live for acting, because we all have different interests. I'm obsessed with acting, but Lord knows it frustrates me at times, and Lord knows I have other things to kind of entertain myself. Sport. Yeah. Does anyone have any notes on that before I move on to the next point?
Anything I can add, if you don't mind me cutting in.
Yeah.
With monologue choice, always check, because the general rule is a contemporary and a classical, but Royal Welsh, I know for a fact, has 2 contemporaries now, so that can really catch you out.
It does.
On that thread, I would say always have like 2 or 3 monologues prepared for like each category if you can, because that way if you start doing a monologue and they don't like it, you can say I could do this instead, and that shows you've got the background, you're well prepared, and I just love you for it.
One of my, I'll try not to kind of tell too long an anecdote, but one of my worst, and I've had shit auditions, but also I've had amazing auditions, but one of my worst auditions is when I was doing a Birkov monologue where I was pretending to be like an animal, and I was just kind of, it was a very physical thing. And I remember they saying they didn't want that, they didn't want a physical performance, and they asked me for another monologue, and I didn't have one because in their advert it was saying just bring one. And that kind of, as soon as that happened, I was just like, well, I've fucked this audition, because they've openly expressed that what I've done they don't like, and they've asked me to provide a new one, and nothing's, well, I've had nothing. So again, that's part of being prepared. In that instance, I wasn't prepared. So yeah.
I had a similar thing with my Royal Welsh, my second one, because I went the previous year to the classical and a contemporary, which was what they wanted. I checked the website at the start of the year, but I don't think they'd updated it, because I'm sure it said the same thing again. Got to my audition, and he went, actually, we want 2 contemporaries, and I was like, I fucked it, because I didn't know it.
Yeah.
So
onto my next point, and my final point about kind of the audition process before we go into kind of monologue finding. Confidence is massive. And when I started auditioning, I wasn't massively confident. I remember my first audition, I was quite unwell with nerves before my first ever audition. And confidence is just such a massive thing, and I've thought this for a long time, and I've always kind of thought you can be an amazing actor, but if you don't have confidence, then you're almost half as good as you can be. And we're in a tricky time where if you believe you're confident, you're almost kind of scrutinized for being self-indulgent, and it's a fine line. But you need to believe you're good to do well. And that sounds kind of obvious, but it's quite hard. It's hard to believe in yourself, because again, if you're getting told you're shit, or well, not your shit, but if you keep getting rejected for different stuff, then you're gonna feel bad. But again, in my experience, I've been rejected for everywhere, and I've been rejected for a lot of stuff. But recently, I've had a really big success. So you get rejected a lot, but you do get accepted a lot as well. And so what I normally do, or what I did, so recently I auditioned for the National Youth Theatre, and I ended up getting in this year. And I remember going to that audition, and I prepared well. I'll be honest to myself, I prepared well. There's been other times where I haven't, again, Brett Birkhoff performance. And something I always do, I always have kind of hype music before I go and audition, and it kind of like sounds. I kind of get in the mindset of like I'm a boxer or something. Like, you know, when they do the, it sounds stupid, but you know when they have like ring walks and they like come out like with all the people around them and they've got like belting like music in the background. I almost try and recreate that with when I go to an audition. So if I'm walking, I remember for the NYT audition, I had about a 30-minute walk. All the way there, I was just listening to like really like pump hype songs. So I was kind of hyping myself up and I was psyching myself up for it. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to get it. And it sounds ridiculous and it sounds cringy and it's cheesy and stupid and whatever. But it gave me such confidence just to kind of listen to a playlist, which gave me confidence. Also, the night before that audition, I kind of watched a lot of interviews with actors and I collected a lot of quotes because if you look on YouTube, if you look up any actor, your favorite actor, there'll be a video of them giving advice to younger actors. Mm-hmm. And I looked up, who's the American guy from Breaking Bad?
Bryan Cranston.
Yeah, I looked up an interview with him. I looked up an interview with Matt Smith, who didn't go to drama school. He just went to NYT. And I got a lot of quotes, and they're actually good quotes, and they help motivate you, and they help kind of de-stress you. So I've highlighted a few, and they're not like great like Martin Luther King-esque quotes that are like reminded. We've removed the. Oh, okay. Zoom has just told me that they've removed the 40-minute time limit on my group meeting.
They do that sometimes.
Oh, how lovely. Though these quotes aren't like listed in the Airs of History, they're very good. So one I've got written down is value your talent, which sounds like an obvious one. But I think with acting, there's so much stuff that is just obvious, but you just need to kind of believe it and need to understand it. So just value yourself. You are good. I've seen everyone at UE Drama Soc this year audition. Well, I've seen most of you audition, and there's not been a terrible audition. In fact, I think everyone's had a good audition. So, yeah, just value yourself. You guys are good performers. Another one?
I would agree.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced. I'm pretty sure I pissed myself my way through the Panto audition because it was actually the first proper audition I'd done. And I was opposite Ben, what's his face?
Ben Reeves.
And he was just so unbelievably funny. And I just kept cracking up trying to do my lines. So funny.
At the end of the day, though, you've got in and you got into another show after that. So, yeah. I mean, it's quite hard because I come out of auditions thinking that I remember I auditioned for Mount View once and I thought I did the worst audition I've ever done. I think I forgot one of my lines. And I ended up getting a call back. So it's a really weird process. But just because you think you've done bad doesn't always necessarily mean that you have. And again, you got in, so it shows that you must not have been terrible. The second one I've got is perform as if it's your last. And this sounds a little bit over the top, but perform as if you're like, I don't know,
I need to disappear for a second.
Oh, go for it. So what was I saying? Perform as if it's your last. And yeah, it's quite self-explanatory, so I won't go on about that. Perform like you already have the role. Now, I thought this was great advice because I'm never really scared to perform unless it's an audition. Like, if I've got the part, I think I can perform kind of comfortably. Well, semi-comfortably. Like, I'm most nervous when I have to audition for a part. So if you go in being like, with this kind of belief that you've kind of already got the role, or they're just kind of, and this is just a dress run, or this is just a rehearsal, or this is just like a first kind of taster of what you can give to a character, then I think it kind of, again, psychologically kind of helps you out a lot. So
Yeah.
that's good. So those
when you've got the role, you have that safety net of, I've been chosen for this role, so obviously I don't have to worry about if I'm good enough. But in auditions, you don't have that, so you've got to get into the mindset, like you were saying. You've got to psychologically give yourself that safety net, even if it's not.
Just believe in yourself, because you guys are good. I've seen a lot of good auditions this year, some great auditions.
Indeed.
And I don't think any audition has been as bad as some of my auditions. So you guys have done better auditions than I have.
We've had a lot of hard decisions to make when we were casting things.
Yeah,
so
and a lot. Yeah, another one is the panel are always on your side. They're always here to like help you, and they always want you to do well. Like if people do well, I'm so excited, and if people maybe don't do as well, I mean, I've never really had like a god awful one, but I must imagine the kind of unbearable feeling if somebody has a bad audition. And us as panelists, we always want you to do well, and we'll always be on your side. And sometimes we've had to cast for a show of like 5 people in a cast, and 30 people have auditioned. So there is statistics. But if you're confident, if you know your stuff, you'll do well. And I think people on the panel can always tell those who are confident and who know their stuff. I feel like like if you line everyone up, I can kind of like point to the people who know their stuff in an audition. Cool. So that's basically the brief of giving audition advice. Now I'll try and give some advice on kind of finding a monologue before wrapping up. Oh my God, I saw Sarah Berridge and I shut myself.
What? Oh my God. Who is that? I want to know who that is.
That's true. I haven't known who this is since we started.
Who is it?
You know?
I also, Sarah Berridge means nothing to me.
The drama lecturer.
Okay.
Who is it?
Who are you?
Who are you? This is taking a massive sidetrack. Well,
shall we take guesses?
I'm
gonna guess Lola.
I was thinking Lola.
I was thinking Lola. Since I saw Real FU earlier,
Is there anything I can do?
Lola.
Sorry, I don't know Zoom. Can I like unmute or something?
Yeah, you should be able to
Oh, hang on.
reveal your secrets.
No. I don't think they want to.
They're hiding.
Fair enough. Hi, whoever you are.
No stranger.
It's like Zorro in the chat. Anywho, finding a monologue. Finding a monologue's a really tough one to give advice for, because I feel the best advice really is just kind of read plays. And I know that's helpful. So I will kind of elaborate a bit, and I'll try and help out a little bit further than that. But as we know, like contemporary plays are kind of last 10, 20 years. If you're at UWE and you're studying drama at UWE, the kind of plays that Kath has in her kind of catalogue, I think those are the kind of play. You've got to be careful on some of the dates, but I think some of those plays, Kath's in the chat.
Oh my God.
The plays that you could use. And if you've actually seen a monologue in one of those plays, I don't see why you can't or shouldn't use them. But yeah, try and read plays that have basically come out in the last 10 or 20 years, essentially. Some of my favorite writers are Dennis Kelly. I'll leave a bit of a pause so if anyone wants to write it down. Joe Pennell is quite good. Penhall, and Martin McDonough is a god in my mind. However, I do have hang on, bear with me. Let me just close this down. This is where we get the special effects out. I'm gonna try and share my screen.
Oh.
Show you kind of how to find a monologue. Whoa. All right, so if I click share screen, hang on, with that. Cool, what does that do? Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Hey, there it is.
Me
Lovely.
hoping to God there isn't an inappropriate website. So I think the easiest thing, God, why did I say that? So I think the easiest thing to do, or what I would do, is basically just type in British playwrights and essentially just kind of go down the line. I mean, some that are in black and white are probably a bit too old, and you can probably guess. Harold Pinter's he's a bit of an old writer. So what I did earlier, but I genuinely did this earlier, and I don't really know any of these plays. I just kind of chose one of these guys. I chose Jez Butterworth, and I don't think I've read any of their plays. And I chose him, and I ended up finding one of his plays called The Ferryman, and I've never read it. I haven't researched it or anything. Came out in 2017. It's a good time. They also did Mojo and Jerusalem, two plays I have heard of. So I chose The Ferryman because I hadn't heard of it and hadn't read it. And then luckily, I was able to go on Drama Online. And Drama Online is a website that I think all UE students can use. And I would advise you actually read the play, but essentially all I did was just kind of scroll down until I found a big chunk of text, essentially. And I found this one and Maggie. Maybe she's a bit old. I don't know, if you look at the play, you could probably find an age, but maybe this is a bit of an old character for us younglings to perform. But you've got a monologue here that looks quite good, quite chunky, like a good chunk of time. I skimmed through it, and we've got some nice imagery. So we've got ginger goblins. I know no context to this. It's someone telling a story, I think. I loved a man who loved another. So there's clammy hands, there's lots of good imagery. There's a story, there's ellipses, which is kind of dictating the pace of the monologue, which is always good to kind of have a writer who kind of dictates with pace. Beats, I think. So I haven't read it, you'll have to read it, but this looks like a good monologue to use. I found one again, the prologue. If we go to the prologue, there was one here. This might be a bit short, but this one looked quite good. This was telling a story and it looked quite interesting. And this is all you essentially just need to do. Look up plays online, look at playwrights that are very popular. Timberlake Wittenbecker is quite good. She's done some good monologues. Basically just kind of scroll down the list, find people. Richard Bean, I don't know much about. And yeah, just kind of look up their plays. Type in a play with monologue in it. So I know a play called like The Pillow Man or something. If you just type in like The Pillow Man and like monologue, something might come up. So contemporary monologue there. You've got some videos. These are all a little bit not great, in my opinion. A lot of monologues you find on YouTube don't tend to be great. But that's essentially how you kind of find monologues, really. You just kind of find playwrights, find what plays they've done. And that's essentially how you find a play. I don't know if you've got any more advice, Dan.
I would add a few things. I would say choose monologues that are close to you, so don't try to play an old person or like a child, because that will never go down well. Yeah. Choose monologues with a range in them, so if you're doing two, choose one that's like more comedic and one that's more serious, possibly, because you want to try and show off a range what you can do. They want to see that you can do lots.
Well, a range could be different things as well. You know, you can have one that's maybe... I don't know, but one that's maybe very seated and very calm and internal, and then maybe one that's very lively and external. There are different, just show some kind of element of range.
Oh yeah, just don't be a one-trick pony. Take something close to you, like I said. Not too much more that Max hasn't already covered.
I think I came across Dennis Kelly, who's one of my go-to playwrights for monologues, because he writes some brilliant monologues, and I performed one of his monologues that got me into NYT, so I'm saving that one. And I got Dennis Kelly advised to me by someone I already knew. So I met someone who then who was really good at drama, and I think I just inboxed him and was just like, can you recommend me any playwrights? And he did, and I looked him up, and I found that monologue. And make sure it's a monologue you kind of like or you can relate to. It's kind of like what Dan said, but I think one of the questions I was asked when I performed one of my monologues is why I chose that monologue. And it was really weird because it was a very sad and kind of dark monologue about about someone my age who's forced to kill their dog. And the reason I liked that monologue, weirdly, is because I love animals and I love dogs. So the idea that I had to almost play someone, well, actually the character does like dogs, but to do something so horrendous to like an animal, I found very kind of hard hitting and very kind of dark. So I related to it by not relating to it at all. And yeah, you've got to, I think if you choose a monologue, you've got to have a monologue that you like and you enjoy performing. Because again, you've got to enjoy yourself when you perform these things. And it's hard, but that's kind of what you have to do, really. Enjoy it. And if you psych yourself up, if you know your stuff, if you're confident, if you're choosing a monologue that really is great and you really fucking know how to do it well, you'll have fun with it and you'll have fun answering questions. And then you get accepted into something really quite good. And it's a pretty funky time.
What I'd also say, though, just lastly about choosing monologues is at least know you got to know the context of them. So at least be like a summary of the play if you're not going to read the entire thing, and the scene before and the scene after your monologue, if nothing else, just so you know where you've come from, where you're going, and general context. But ideally, read the whole play. But you know, if you can't, then just do that. Because
cool. So my final thing of this event, of this Zoom meeting, is I'll again point you again, because if you are want to be actors, I recommend highly doing these National Youth Theatre auditions that come across every year. And what the National Youth Theatre is, it's kind of like this exclusive club which you audition for and then you get invited to join. And very frequently they put on like sessions and Q&As with some very kind of high profile individuals. And it's just a really good startup place, or it's a really good thing to have under your belt if you're trying to go out as an actor. And I think you're a member till you're 25, I think.
Rip me.
Oh dear.
If you're under 25, then yeah, I recommend it highly because it's it's good and you can learn a lot through it. And I've been a member for like 2-3 weeks, and I've already been in some really good workshops. And hopefully, some of the advice I get from them, I can kind of give to you, the people, to quote them.
That's a cred you got to flex there. You should have mentioned earlier.
Cool. So yeah, I guess that's it for the today's thingy. We've been going for like 35 and 40 minutes. I think we've got other ideas of stuff to do. Again, we're talking about doing a quiz. Don't know if you want to talk about it, Dan.
Yeah, like I said, mentioned earlier, I'm going to try and do like a general Q&A one, and I'll probably write a few cues that I can A in case no one actually joins us here on Zoom. Just so there's something to show. Yeah, there's the quiz coming up. We're thinking of doing a few other things, just, you know, to keep you all active, to keep drama sort of going in these tricky times. Yeah, in the meantime, keep looking after yourselves, look after each other, stay safe.
And look at the dog if you're on Zoom. It's the benefits. I always have Ben with a dog.
I actually have 3. This is one of the better ones.
Oh.
She stinks.
Hello.
Right? She's just come back from a walk.
Oh.
Has it washed its hands?
Probably not.
Oh no.
Anyway, cool. So, well, thanks, Ben, for coming. And Bea Pearson, Kath Rogers, Sarah Berridge, thank you for coming. And
any final questions from any of our live or participants before we go? Anyone to want? Ben, Sarah Berridge, whoever you are.
I think that's it. I think we're good.
Cool.
So yeah, cool. That's it. So we'll keep you updated with stuff to come. Yeah, should be fun. Hopefully, at least something. We're giving something during this time where it's hard to give a lot, but we're gonna try.
Indeed.
We're gonna try. So cool. Thank you very much, all, and yeah. See you. Goodbye. Goodbye.
Really well.